Race, Class, Access, and Equity. Assignment for AEP 855 course. First article is Education is Social Justice. I believe that education is the civil rights issue of our generation, and if you care about promoting opportunity and reducing inequality, the classroom is the place to start. Great teaching is about so much more than education. It is a daily fight for social justice. The words of Arne Duncan, Secretary of Education. The main points of the article: the definition of social justice is to protect the dignity of human beings while maintaining core pillars of equality. Duncan understands that the education of America's children is a civil rights issue. Our collective failure to provide quality education fundamentally undermines the dignity of our students. He pinpointed the issue of education as involving the reaffirmation of the civil rights of America's students, a reaffirmation of their dignity as human beings. He wants high-quality teachers and leaders in America's classrooms, to continue to invest in schools to turn around underperformers, and those schools that don't turn around, close them. He also advocates a rigorous academic standards for all students. Dr. Thomas McKenzie, in The Importance of Social Justice in 21st Century Physical Education, gives us a different definition of social justice. He says, it includes a vision of society that is equitable, where its members are physically and psychologically safe and secure. He defines the goals of social justice education as a means to provide full and equal participation of all groups in a society that is mutually shaped to meet their needs. In the landmark case of Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka in 1954, it set a precedent for the teaching of social justice education. The impact of this legislation had ramifications that stretched beyond the confines of the classrooms and laid groundwork for additional civil rights legislation that was to follow in the next 2 decades. He also mentions the impact of Title IX. These included providing equal access for boys and girls to the total physical education curriculum, instituting grouping based on ability instead of gender, and the assigning of teachers based on skill instead of gender. Title IX has unequivocally impacted the future of numerous girls and women in physical education and sports. The United States is currently undergoing a cultural transformation that has brought about issues related to racism, sexism, xenophobia, homophobia, and social class to the forefront. As professionals, we must recognize how important it is for these topics to be addressed. Social justice can be made applicable and relevant to our practices if we consider the importance of design, discussion, engagement, and assessment. Design recognizes that there is a philosophical change that must take place and considers different populations that need to be served. Without this philosophical change, design in regards to introducing social justice issues in education will be ineffective. This requires a knowledge of the stakeholders of the community, their ethnicity, their impairments, and their needs. Presenting social justice issues in education demands a commitment by these teachers to obtain the most current and accurate information possible. Design's greatest impact is on curriculum. Curriculum dictates what is taught, why it is taught, and, to a large extent, what will be disseminated to the learner. The second point, discussion, cultivates an environment by which discourse regarding social issues can take place in our physical education programs. While design is dependent on the desire to make a philosophical change, discussion is dependent on verbal communication. It also requires an open mind and a willingness to listen as well as speak. Regardless of race, background, culture, sexual orientation, gender, disability, or social class, students entrusted in our care have the right to the same education that are afforded to all by the laws of this country. The third point of engagement is the next process that is significant in our practices. Engagement involves making the issues that were outlined in the design process and conveyed in the discussion process existent to the students in the educational environment. Engagement takes discussion further and involves hands-on fieldwork and immersing individuals in an activity or experience that will impact them. There are questions to be used to guide engagement. First, students should be asked about their feelings regarding the experience. Another is what they noticed about the experience. How the experience relate to what was discussed in class. A final question worth asking is if the experience impacted them in any way, and if so, how. Assessment is the final means by which social justice themes can be relevant in our practices. Students should be required to reflect upon their experiences as they happen, so the teacher has a better idea of the attitude of the class and what students deem as issues important to them. If periodic assessment of student attitudes about social justice issues does not take place, the likelihood is that students will gain little from what was presented. Part of our responsibility is to impress upon students the importance of examining social issues both critically and with an open mind. Many fear presenting social justice issues because they require a certain amount of risk and acknowledgement that all of the right answers might not be visible at once. The answers are not the easiest ones to obtain, nor are they always readily explainable. Social justice attempts to ensure equity for all members of our society, despite how uncompromising and ugly the results at times seem in the eyes of many. The next article, Social Justice Teaching from the Student's Side, by Mark Barlane. There is a level of student resistance to discussion of social justice issues. In this short but insightful article, Mark Barlane attempts to explain why. Some students see discussions of oppression as entailing blame, and they wish to remain blameless. They tend not to suffer social injustice, and so they don't or won't recognize its actual existence and extent. Perhaps they do recognize it and feel guilty about not being a target of it. Many instructors of social justice education are political liberals. So, when students resist social justice education, it is possible that they don't reject social justice per se, but only the version of social justice offered in a particular classroom. Barlane makes the point that in the final analysis, the student may well acquiesce to the course, but only to obtain their grade and not really making a change. The next article, Eliminating Racism in the Classroom, by Richard Morgan. Educators who practice a reconstructionist philosophy believe it is their duty to be social activists. They must continually search for means to improve society by ending degradation and harm. Despite the trend of multicultural literature, many school books remain monocultural in their presentation of knowledge. Teachers should select texts that represent non-mainstream persons positively. Text should also promote the equity of people with mental and physical handicaps, the gifted, the elderly, and between the genders. Cooperative learning groups are not only an effective tool to stimulate academic growth through participation, but they may also be successful vehicles to help eliminate racism. Group work exposes individual attitudes, ideas, experiences, and beliefs that are used to achieve a common goal through a collective effort. Other methods to help eliminate racism may include a variety of active learning strategies through different multisensory learning styles. Some can make posters condemning racism, some make movies, create anti-racist rap songs, etc. Children must accept the fact that racism will exist outside of the classroom. If a student cannot relate to racism as it affects himself, then he may not understand it completely and choose not to actively participate in its elimination. Students must learn that racism is an unfortunate part of our society and that attempting to eliminate it in schools is a step in the right direction. The final article, Race, Gender, and Disability in Today's Children's Literature, by Kyra Asak-Perovsky. Perovsky identifies the problem as follows. The growing need to educate children of different races, abilities, and genders has forced educators to find literature and curriculum that best suits the mix of students in classrooms across America. Multicultural and non-sexist children's literature gives students in the majority an understanding of their minority peer struggles, triumphs, and contribution to our culture and society. However, the current children's literary canon is largely dominated by books that recount the experiences of white males. Researchers have documented that children's books are bereft of Asian, Hispanic, Afro-American, disabled, and female characters. Fact: only 10 of 500 award-winning children's novels published between 1987 and 1991 had a disabled character. Fact: the recommended children's reading list generated by the former U.S. Secretary of Education Bennett did not include any Asian, Hispanic, or Afro-American characters. Fact: even best-selling books that have sold in excess of 1 million copies are bereft of African-American characters. During the last 2 decades, on 4 out of 253 bestsellers, only 4 out of 253 bestsellers featured African Americans. The conclusions: in the coming decades, expectations are that mainstreaming of disabled children will increase. Public Law 94-142 will add more disabled children to regular classrooms. Societal stereotypes of girls as being passive and weak are also being challenged. Title IX added to the number of girls participating in school sports programs. No one benefits from a continued misrepresentation and underreporting of disability, gender, and race. Because of the power of the children's media to educate and inform, and because it is a transmitter of society's cultures and values, it must mirror the diversity of its readers and diversity of the larger aggregate society. Thank you very much.